Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome
Good morning,
to the
Sunrise
In
High.
2030, crimes against humanity.
Welcome to year 2060.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Africa Economist Show. And today we'll be talking about how in 2020, the African Union decided to pass a bill which was proposed to come up with a common currency on the African continent, which obviously didn't work out. And today we're joined by a young man from Kenya. His name is Eric, and he decided to come up with a very amazing platform, which was an alternative to the common currency. And today he'll be explaining a bit more to us about how that came about and what was his motivation for coming up with this app.
This platform is it's a modern barter trade platform where it's a digital way in whereby different parties can come together and exchange goods in such that maybe you might have an item that you might not need. I might have an item in possession that I might not need, and then how can we come together so that there's seamless exchange between the goods. And the motivation for this was back in the day, in the year 2020, much of how trade was being done was regardless of your financial status, regardless of whether you had little or no money, you always had to have some form of currency for you to actually get either some goods or services. And so the platform kind of brings the two together, and it actually drives away the point of actually having actual cash for the people to do their trade.
Right, that's very interesting because on the African continent, the barter trade system has been part of our lives for centuries. So how did you look at bringing the barter trade system, which is very ancient and archaic, into a modern platform? Like, how did that come about?
Okay, if you look globally, in terms of all this globalization that's happening, we find that very many people from different regions of the world kind of appropriate Africans' traditions and systems, things that already been in existence for centuries and working, and they kind of appropriate these systems and processes and capitalize on them in their own parts of the world. And another motivation for this was how can we leverage such traditional and indigenous systems that has been working in our continent. So how do we actually capitalize and leverage these for our own good? So that's how the whole idea of having like a modern kind of barter trade system in a very digital way came about.
And I also like that this is true spirit of Ubuntu, like the communities coming together and sharing, goods and on a platform. And this has been part of our tradition for years. Did you think that your app would also bring Ubuntu and people together to actually, share goods and services?
Yeah, exactly. Actually, one of the pillars of the African Union is the intra-trade between communities. And in this way, if you look back at the time, trade was one of the most unifying things in our African communities. It brought people together.
Yeah.
So, and in this modern barter trade system that we have right now, it's also a way of bringing and unifying people through trade. But it always doesn't have to. The people, even if it's from different regions, they always don't have to fall back to a currency that they can trade in for that. So it's also a form of way of unifying people, just as the way we were doing back in the time. In a very
All right, this is like very, very interesting because I've also used the platform. I remember a time when I was like really stranded and I needed some vegetables for a family function, and I got to exchange that with an old phone, which I was not using, with a local farmer in the region, and it was very helpful for me. So, I mean, you've probably helped a lot of people across Rwanda and Kenya as well. And I can also imagine this app also working for someone who wants to trade, a farmer who wants to trade in Zimbabwe with someone in Rwanda for coffee. Do you imagine your app even going to that scale of people trading their goods from across different regions in Africa?
Exactly. higher than, on a higher level than even people you can find that on a higher level in terms of how governments, like how even the different governments of the continent trade with each other. Maybe one country has some form of natural resources and the other country has something they can also offer in terms of their natural resources. The two countries at a higher level could also come together and actually exchange those services and goods in a very harmonious and
Okay, well, thank you so much, Eric, for joining us. This was lovely speaking to you, and I wish you all the best with your up. For 10 more years down the line, I can imagine what economic empowerment is going to have for our people and the continent as well.
Good morning, Sunrise High. Welcome to our annual career fair. We have decided to invite Commander Karaoke, who's part of the AU Standing Army, to let those who are interested in that career path learn more about what being in the Standing Army means. Welcome, Commander Karaoke. Please, tell us more about yourself.
So I'm going to I think instead of telling you more about myself, I'll just tell you more about what I do. So in 2020, the Africa Union decided to start a standing army to deal with the conflicts and the violence that was going on on the continent, and to kind of come up with a way that we could actually have a peacekeeping forum for us as a whole continent. And so that's how the standing army began, and I joined 3 years later. I joined immediately after high school, and I joined it from a university standpoint, where you actually get to go to training for different courses that you want to do, ranging from social sciences to technical courses like engineering, and then while at the same time you're actually getting training in combat, intelligence gathering, peacekeeping, and it just depends with your different skills and what you can do. So for example, you could actually have someone who's in the army who studied philosophy and they're still in the army, but then they can actually do both of them. Yeah.
What exactly do you do in the army?
So I am the one who is in charge of allocating the we have two different departments in this army. So the main one, so there's the peacekeeping task force, and then there's actually the military group. So I command the military group. So the military group, our mandate is to actually make sure that there's peace. If there's conflict, you actually go solve it. If it actually needs aggressive force, where you actually go with combat and things like that. While on the other hand, my colleagues actually work in the peacekeeping task force, where our work is to actually prevent conflict from occurring. So the different members, we actually put them in the different countries, and you get to study the region and kind of make sure that it's like you're preventing war from happening, preventing conflict from happening, and that's kind of what we do. So we work together to make sure that we have a really perfect region.
That's interesting. I read that in 2020, when the army was formed, there were a lot of internal conflicts within the continent. Your DRC conflict, and I heard that there was a conflict in Sudan. Please let us know how exactly the part the army played in solving those conflicts, and from the start, from 2020.
Okay. So the main thing that we do is we did at that point is having placed the different people who are trained. Mainly the main thing we focused on, we didn't want to have a fight. We didn't know so we went for peacekeeping. So we have people going and finding out what the real issues are going, whether it's religion, whether it's something going with mining. So it's strategists who help the different teams, all the stakeholders who are involved, to come to a place where they have a mutual understanding. And when we had a problem, which unfortunately we did, a few places we actually had to go into war, but because of the contributions we had from all the different countries, and we were able to actually solve this better.
Okay, thank you so much for your time and effort, Commander Karaoke. I know you're a very busy human being.
In 2030, crimes against humanity, especially ethnic cleansing, were rampant as some African states tried to institute the use of one regional common language. Luckily, through the intervention of a standing army, within 10 years, order was restored. The year is 2050, and Africa opted not to use one common language of instruction. The preferred future reimagines Africa through the fusion of all languages. The development of an Afrocentric Language Planning Act as a social political stance identifies how and by whom a certain language is spoken rather than a policing strategy. We aim to encourage more Africans to learn more African languages. the policy can be modified to ensure the preservation of indigenous languages as major languages such as Kiswahili, Arabic, and Yoruba make headway across the continent. Through the institution of the UN Sustainable Development Goals number 4 and number 11, through instituting sustainable cities, we aim to set up language centers and cultural institutions to open up employment opportunities, and also through having higher quality education where the major language groups, Bantu, the Cushitic language and also the Nilotic languages, are introduced into the learning system, provide higher literature for students in the future.
Welcome to year 2060. It's been 40 years since the whole continent has agreed to have a common parliament and president. Boarding a plane to Libya, I'm amazed by the diversity of Africans from different states at the airport. My mind took me back to the year 2020 with fragmented leadership all around the continent. All we knew was war, cessation, corruption, poverty, bad education, and we can't forget the difficulties to combat deadly pandemics like the COVID-19. Traveling to the United States of America was virtually cheaper than moving across the continent. Now, we've made it to the year 2060, only 3 years to celebrate the African Union's Agenda 2063, and though Africa has agreed to form a political union under a confederal government. The parliament under the union government is the highest decision-making body that elects the president of the union based on concrete policies for a period of 10 years. Africans, no matter what country they come from, can freely travel across the continent and with a single passport, knowing that the same rules, the same constitution, legal system, and social policies apply to them. Under the union government, every African are one people, and no matter what family they come from, they have access to free primary, secondary, and tertiary education. The government strengthens the social safety net by providing basic social services for all families who don't have the means. The university enrollment of 2020 in Sub-Saharan Africa of 6% is now capped because students have access to government loans to go to school and have job security upon graduation. Child mortality that stood at 1 in 13 children in Sub-Saharan Africa in the year 2020, dying before their 5th birthday, is capped because there are improved medical and health systems provided for free for all citizens under the welfare system. The union government provides basic human needs, food, and shelter for everyone who can't afford it. The number of children dying every year over hunger is reduced, and the number of women giving birth in unsanitary places is mitigated. People have the chance to be who they want to be. The media is free, the market is free, innovation is thriving, and people are living longer than they used to. Everyone you know has access to vocational training, of university education, healthcare, and all of that. Instead of secluding a budget for a short-term election campaigns, the presidential terms are extended to 10 years, and the budget is oriented to voted projects implementation. Now, imagine in the year 2020 under the nation state with fragmentation, and imagine 2060 with the union government, where all Africans have a common aspiration, a common passport, a common president. Which one do you prefer?